Hello and a very good day everyone. So today we will learn on debt service ratio, or also known as DSR. Debt service ratio. So let's get started to understand what is debt service ratio. So debt service ratio basically is a ratio used by banks. Okay, so I'm going to write here debt service ratio, and this ratio are normally used by banks and lender to basically to analyze the borrower, to evaluate the credit worthiness of the borrower. Meaning to say is to determine if the borrower is able to pay the installment or debt and so on. Basically to assess the credit worthiness of the borrower, to evaluate if the borrower is able to cater the payment, the interest payment, the installment payment without any default, without any failure. So now to understand this particular definition, we need to go to an example. So for example, over here you have a salary. So just say your salary is about 3,700 and then you want to buy a car. So for example, you want to buy a BMW, and the monthly installment for BMW can even be up to 2,600. So in this case, you notice that this is your monthly installment and this is your salary. So to calculate the debt service ratio is basically your installment divided with your salary. So equal this 2,600, your debt installment divided with your salary. So I'm going to put it over here. So this is your monthly installment, or your principal, your interest, your debt and so on, and this is your income. So in this case, installment divided by income, when you convert it, you notice it's about 70%. What does it interpret? Means that means 70% of your salary, 70% of your salary is used to cover the installment, and the remaining 30% is for your survival, for your food and so on. So however, if just say a particular individual just buy a simple car which is 𝗦𝗲𝗶𝗴𝗏, okay, whether it's 𝗦𝗲𝗶𝗏𝗏 or 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 or Proton, so just say his installment is just about 500. So 500 over 3,700, you will notice about 40%, 14% of the salary will goes to cover the installment, and the person has remaining 86% money to actually for survive. So in this context, so the DSR, the lesser the better, because if just say your installment is high, then you will have high commitment, your savings will be lesser, and you have little money to spend for yourself. However, if just say your installment is lower, then your DSR will be lower, and this can eventually let the bank to be approved. But you have to bear in mind, sometimes we do have situations like COVID-19 pandemic, whereby the ratio, the rate or thresholds can be changed, because initially anything more than 40%, anything DSR, debt service ratio more than 14% will be rejected. However, before the pandemic, the Malaysian government has given a threshold upon roughly up to 60%. Meaning to say, if just say your debt service ratio eventually hit up to 60%, then possibly you will be accepted. But you also need to see other factors as well. If just say this particular individual, his salary is 3,700, but he decided to buy a BMW which costs about 2,800, meaning to say about 76% of his salary is gone to cover the installment. However, what if this particular individual, his uncle is Elon Musk, or his uncle is Bill Gates? If just say your uncle is Bill Gates or Elon Musk, then this particular person can be a guarantor. A guarantor meaning, if just say this particular person failed to pay the payment, there is a default in making the payment of the principal and interest, then the particular uncle can be a guarantor to act as the person in charge, to represent the person to make the payment. So basically, what is DSR? DSR is debt service ratio. Basically, is used by banks, by lenders to determine if the borrower is able to pay the installment.